Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Just in Time Cafe webinar. I'm Tracy Aurora, co-founder of the Just in Time Cafe, and I'm going to be your moderator today. And today's webinar is titled How to Drive the Best Remote Brainstorming for Lean Teams, but really brainstorming for anyone, anywhere. And today's presenter is my colleague, Elizabeth Swan. How are you today, Elizabeth?
I'm awesome, Tracy.
So let me tell you a little bit about Elizabeth. She's the co-founder of the Just in Time Cafe, my partner in crime. She's also co-authored the book, The Problem Solver's Toolkit, and she teaches Lean Six Sigma with me at UC San Diego as well. And she's been a process improvement consultant for over 30 years, and she's going to rock the house today. So just a few housekeeping notes before we begin. At the end of the presentation, we are going to have Q&A, but feel free to answer any questions you have in the chat window. We'd be happy to answer them at any time. And we do welcome your participation. So we're going to be asking you some questions to participate today throughout the chat. And also, people always ask us, are the slides going to be available? Yes, they will. They'll be posted on the Just in Time Cafe website in the coming weeks. And so thank you for participating. I'm noticing that people are telling us where they're coming in from. So thank you so much. So we have lots of friendly and familiar faces today. I always love to see that. Paul from Asheville, Linda from Michigan. We also have Vic from Chesapeake, Virginia. Mike from San Diego, our dear Mike. Amy, hello, how are you from Connecticut? And we also have Steve from Ottawa, Brian from Boca Raton. We have Michael from Charlotte. Jen, thanks for joining from Ann Arbor. And we've got another wonderful San Diego woman, Sally, with us today. And Jacqueline, thanks for coming. Kara from Seattle. I love all these faces. Maria from Portland, hi. Debbie from Charlotte. I could go on and on. Jennifer Ayers from Portland, hi. And Jared, thank you. Hey, Heather, how are you? And Gemma, our star from last month. So we've got lots of people on our webinar today because we all want to hear what Elizabeth has to say about brainstorming. So I also want to just share, in the past, GoLean6Sigma.com hosted these webinars and podcasts, but now the JIT Cafe, short for the Just in Time Cafe, is our new home. We're redecorating and remodeling. We found the JIT Cafe in order to cultivate a hub where problem solvers connect, share, and grow. And these are our three core values. We want to cultivate community. We want to create an inclusive, positive space where people around the world connect with each other to learn and grow. And I'm already feeling the love today because I see a lot of familiar faces, like I said. And we also have some really exciting stuff that we're working on for next year. Something like, well, I'll just say something called the CoLab. That might be a virtual place for us to brainstorm and practice things, experiments like what we do for a living. We also believe in a trailblazing spirit. We want to have the courage to challenge and inspire each other, create a constant state of awesomeness, and a safe environment too to practice things. And we also finally believe in a rising tide. By lifting each other up, we will strengthen the global problem-solving community. Doesn't that feel good? Yes. And so now I'm going to hand over the reins to my partner in crime, Elizabeth.
Oh, thank you, Tracy. I will start with some learning objectives. After attending this webinar, you're going to be able to describe the inhibitors to group brainstorming, list the steps to enhance remote brainstorming, outline good how can we questions, and identify how to get your best ideas. So the agenda, we're going to talk about the problems with group brainstorming, and then we're going to get into what makes the difference, how to get the best remote results, and then how to plan for your next group problem solving session and Q&A. But as Tracy said, Q&A, you're welcome to ask questions anytime. We'll field your questions as we go. Don't feel like you've got to, hold on to the end. So I have asked this in another session recently, but I'm sure you can still participate because I know you've got some other thoughts here, but where are you and what are you doing when you get your best ideas? Now go ahead and type that into the chat area. Where are you? What are you doing when you get your best ideas? And Tracy, you tell me what you see.
All right. So Jen says blow drying her hair. Sally and Linda and Jennifer all say on hikes or on walks. Gemma said just before she wakes up. Nice. Kara says on the Gemba. Love that. Jacqueline says watching TV. I think maybe that's why we sometimes watch, stuff that doesn't challenge us on TV. And TV is good for that.
It's good.
In the shower, washing dishes. Hi, Julie. Waking up at 3 a.m. I know that happens to me too. Larry says walking and driving. Dave on an airplane. Chandra falling asleep in the heat of the moment. I love that, Mike. That's great. Kimberly says just before going to bed.
So I got this question from a wonderful mentor, a guy named Mitch Ditkoff. He's the president of Idea Champions. And he inspired me to ask this question. And I've done it with every group for the past 30 years. And just like you're writing, the answers have been, in the shower, walking, waking up, driving, and guaranteed nobody wrote in a conference room or our current living situation on a Zoom call. And they never do, over 30 years. I don't see that. So this is where traditionally we conducted group brainstorming. This is, when we could be in the office, Post-its were king. Everyone always accuses us, traveling consultants, of having invested in 3M. I don't think any of us did, which is unfortunate. But and this is some of you might even be on the call. This is FBOB. What's that stand for again, Tracy?
Finance and Business Operations Division, King County. Kara's on the call from there today.
Welcome, Kara. And Tracy's been, helping these guys for a lot of years, but now her efforts are all remote, and their efforts are all remote. That entire office is remote. So this is what our sessions look like now, and we're relegated to remote teams, remote facilitation. It's tougher to brainstorm. Not everyone is happy to be on camera, so they might turn it off. If people are not on camera, that's an opportunity to check out or read email or multitask. And when people remain present, they might just get Zoom burnout. It's been a lifesaver, but it's also a little bit tiring, and it takes a toll on group brainstorming. So the question is, why don't we come up with great ideas in the conference room, on the Zoom call with each other? And there's research that explains why we do our best thinking elsewhere. The research was conducted by a guy named Neil Herman. It's published in Scientific American. He developed models of brain activity, which help us understand why we're not coming up with our best ideas in the conference rooms and on the Zoom calls. So he studied 4 categories of brain waves. I'm just going to go briefly over these, but one of them is beta waves. These are what we produce when we are in conversation, we're debating, we're making a speech, we're actively engaged in mental activities like brainstorming, problem solving with a team. It seems like the brain waves that we should work best, but they're not. Next up is alpha waves. We produce these when we take breaks, maybe meditate. Next is theta waves. We produce these when we go for a run, take a shower, drive the car, walk the dog, basically engage in what you might call autopilot activities. And a classic autopilot moment is when you arrive home on a commute and you've done it 100 times and you can't remember the last 10 minutes. You know the activity so well that your mind drifts, but your body knows what to do. And I don't recommend doing that, but just that we've all done that. And theta waves also happen when we're drifting off to sleep or just waking up. And the last category is delta waves. We produce these during our deepest levels of sleep, and there's not much going on then. So Mr. Herman discovered that the ideal brain waves for creating a flow of high quality ideas are theta waves. He found that when tasks become automatic, people go into a state that has a positive impact on their ideation. These same theta brainwaves result in extremely productive periods of meaningful and creative activity. Something similar happens. Gemma mentioned it when she wakes up. Something similar happens during what he calls the awakening cycle, when people drop in and out of sleep. But sleeping, showering, not generally encouraged on most job sites. So I want to do a quick poll and see which of these categories works best for you. So I'm going to launch the poll because I want to know, these are kind of two different states. And let's see, autopilot or awakening. So go ahead and punch in what works for you. And then we'll see what they get. What about you, Tracy?
Let's see. I would definitely say autopilot activities is when, because I don't know why, but as soon as my head hits the pillow, I am out. I know that is a gift for many, but there is no going to sleep time. It's hit the pillow and I'm out. And so it's definitely during autopilot when I'm doing something, riding my bike, around my park that I go around all the time, or walking my dog, something like that. All right. So it looks like 65% of the people say autopilot activities and 35% say upon waking or drifting off to sleep.
I never knew what the split would be, but that seems about right for me. I do wake up in the middle of the night, but it's never good. I don't have good ideas. It's just bad. Thanks for sharing that, you guys. So the name Swan Cycle really started kind of facetiously on a challenge from a colleague, Karen Ross, many of you on the call know. She asked why all the models we were using in Lean Six Sigma were created by men. No offense, Mike and other guys on the call, but she was interested in seeing more models created by women. And I agreed. And I offered, again, kind of facetiously as an example, if we can have a demi-cycle, why couldn't we have a Swan Cycle, since it's my last name? And I was kidding. But it was a working session, and a number of the women all said, yeah, no, create the Swan Cycle. So we were silent for 10 minutes to work on our models. Other models came out of that, which were pretty cool. And the problem I was trying to solve was the silence that took place on calls when people were looking for ideas from a group. And I saw this happening to the people that I was coaching. Even when the group came up with ideas, I wouldn't say they were always elegant solutions. Some of them seem obvious, or rehashes of things tried in the past. So on the spot ideas always seemed a bit lackluster. But I was raised on the superiority of group brainstorming. More minds, more ideas, better. From quantity comes quality, but certainly you get better buy-in engagement, when you've got a group. So what do we do with this paradox? If we know that theta waves produce the best idea flow, the challenge is how to incorporate that into our brainstorming process. And we're not, biking and showering at work. So I use the Swan Cycle as a way to resolve this. And for me, I often get my best ideas when I'm biking. It's literally a Swan Cycle. So here's the cycle: clarify, share, think, assemble, and repeat. And let's dive into the 4 steps. Since this came up during a Women in Lean group, I told some of my female colleagues that you could actually pronounce this CSTA as SISTA, but guys can use it too. It's totally equal opportunity. So the cycle is focused around brainstorming, which is generally associated with coming up with countermeasures to a problem. If you're using PDCA, you might be going from the plan to the do step. If you were using DMAIC, you might be trying to move from analysis, having verified root cause, to improve. What are you going to do about it? Or you could just be looking for input on an issue. You don't need a formal improvement process structure to brainstorm ideas. You could be coming up with family vacation ideas or questions to ask when coaching. It's simply a brainstorming method. So whatever the challenge, first, you have to clarify what we refer to as the how can we question. Okay, what are you trying to solve? Charles Kettering, famed inventor, head of research for GM, said, "A problem well stated is half solved." Albert Einstein felt even more strongly about the how can we question. He's also a little more verbose. If I had an hour to solve a problem and my life depended on the solution, I would spend the first 55 minutes determining the proper question to ask. For once I know the proper question, I could solve the problem in less than 5 minutes. Okay, it's going to take us more than 5 minutes. He's Albert Einstein, and we're not. But both making that great point that getting the question right is a huge piece of this. So this is a problem I see happening with how can we questions. And what I mean by down the funnel is needlessly narrowing the how can we question. Have you limited your options up front? And I had this experience in a spin class a while back, and it sticks out for me as an issue with a how can we question. But the instructor was frustrated with us because we kept putting recyclables in the trash and recyclables. And she'd often spend some part of the class, maybe on a break or at the end, or we're moving somewhere else. And she'd say, "Listen, people, trash is on the left and recycling is on the right. And you guys got to remember that. I'm sick of pulling stuff out." So, she'd say, "I'm going to train you to use the right bins." And she was determined, she was funny, and she was in really good shape. But I'm guessing her how can we question was something like, how can I train the class to put disposables where they should go? And what if she changed her how can we question? What if she asked, how can I ensure people use the right bins? Or how can I reduce the amount of trash I have to pick out of recycling? Or how can I make it easy for people to recycle? There are a lot of options that would have resulted in broader thinking. This opens up, if you change it, now you're looking at, hey, there's some visual options here. It's not a lot of our team leads often go toward training. The people just aren't trained enough. So she was actually echoing something that I've seen a lot in the business world. So it's important to poke at the how can we question and make sure that it doesn't contain assumptions in it or sort of narrow your focus too fast. And the way to do that is to use inquiry. So the art of asking questions, essential for coaching. Those of you out there that do a lot of coaching know this. Michael Stanier's book, The Coaching Habit, was just a book full of what he thought were the best questions to ask when coaching. And I remember first reading his book and implementing just one of his questions just to experiment. And I do it at the end of the call. I was done coaching the person. I had asked all about the project, what I thought all the important questions were out. And then I'd say, okay, I'm going to use one of Stanier's questions. What is your greatest challenge? And what always surprised me was that I thought I'd been through all the questions. We'd covered everything that was going on. Something new came up every single time I asked this. Something uncovered that my questions weren't getting at. So it really struck me how critical the question is. It's essential for understanding a process. Anyone who's conducted a Gemba walk, and I think Kara gets her best ideas there, which is awesome. The questions matter, right? It's you want to ask questions that help you understand. You don't want to ask questions that make people intimidated or wonder if you think they're doing things wrong. So you're really careful about how you ask those questions. The same with the how can we question. It's essential to work toward that right question. You might hear a presenting challenge, but the goal is to get to the real challenge. The problem is people are, we're built to do, we're built to act. You give me a challenge, I might be solving it already as soon as I hear it. How can we do that? I'll tell you how we can do that. We don't stop and go, is that the right thing to focus on? So it could be a symptom, could be a secondary issue, could be a solution masquerading as a problem. That's what training is. It's a solution masquerading as a problem. But Stanier has a nice sequence I just put it in here. I thought it was a good example of ways to sort of poke at the how can we question. He asked, what's the challenge? And then what's the real challenge here? Kind of like pushing a little bit more. What's the real challenge here for you? Pushing a little bit more. And if you had to pick one focus. So again, a series of questions gets people to think, gets get a little more depth, push a little more on the thinking. And leaders saying, I need to get better at things. Oh, I know it. This was recently, Tracy and I were teaching a leadership class, and we were asking people at the end, what kinds of things are you looking to change, right, going forward, some of your leadership behaviors. And one of the participants said she wants to get better at doing things she doesn't like. She said, I don't like presenting information, so I have to get better at presenting. And I thought, well, what if, is that the right question, right? Because that sounds kind of like sad to me, like I got to get better at things I don't like. And I thought, well, what if you change the question? What if you said, how can I make presenting information more fun for me? Or how can I ensure people understand key concepts? So change the question or broaden it. I used to teach juggling to people. So this was to help them understand what their roadblocks were. And, a classic roadblock was people were juggling, but they were catching, they weren't getting a flow because they were afraid the balls would drop, so they would catch them. Well, if you just catch them and hold them, then you're not juggling. So then we could take that metaphor and say, are you afraid to make mistakes? And, what do you think is going to happen if you make mistakes? And just dealing with that fear that a lot of us try to address in culture. But that was not me lecturing on making mistakes or fear in the organization. That was having fun and doing something to get the point across. So just saying there's other ways to ask the question. And Tracy, you've got a great example of someone that had to really fundamentally change a how can we question.
Yeah, obviously we do a lot of lean and process improvement, and sometimes people struggle with finding projects, finding something to make better. Obviously, we tell people to focus on process. And I was speaking with someone who was in HR, and she's like, well, we've got this problem with performance appraisals, and I'm just not getting what I need. How do I make people give me what I want when I need it? And I'm sure everybody really wants that question answered. Right. And I said, well, so let's rethink this. Let's think about, what might be a better question. Because in my opinion, she was sort of making herself the customer, but she wasn't the customer of this process. She's not the customer of performance appraisals. And so we ended up thinking about what the better question was for her project. And it was really more, how do I make this process easier for the people using it so I can get what I want and need? And she was like, oh, yes, that would probably work better. And, that part of that was analyzing the process. I mean, she owns the process. It's an HR process, rather than just forcing people to work through this process that maybe wasn't great. Rethinking the question, how can we make this easier for them, really, was going to actually deliver what she wanted eventually. So it was good. And she always corrects herself too. She always goes, oh yeah, I totally thought I was the customer. I was trying to answer the wrong question. So
that stuck with her. You said she uses that story to help others explain, to help others think about who are they framing as a customer.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's a great one. Thank you. So question for you guys, and you can put this in the chat. What challenges do you experience with creating how can we questions? And I know it's a bugaboo for a lot of us, but I'm just wondering what you see, what you struggle with, what you see groups struggle with, where you see people kind of go in the wrong direction or limit themselves. Tracy, what do you think?
Jacqueline had a good comment. She wrote, people think they know what they want, but they really don't. And, we run into that a lot with process improvement too. And it was kind of something you had said earlier, like, no, we need to train people. How do we train people on this? And that's not really the right question when it comes to process improvement. Kara wrote when it's not a safe space is a challenge, right? So people don't even want to explore what the right question might be because they don't feel safe. Good example. Jennifer writes, to focus on how we can't Right? Yes. Oh my gosh, I know. Yeah, that can be a challenge. People are like too busy to say, no, we can't, we can't, we can't, we can't. Assumption built into the question is what Heather writes. People having assumptions or assuming. Gemma writes, I see people focused on driving towards a particular solution. So it's already locked in and they're sort of unwavering in really thinking about it. Mike writes, leading the witness, right? So, right, the question is really leading the witness as opposed to really an open-ended inquiry question. All right, putting answers in the form of a question. Very good, yes. Focusing on the can'ts, Larry wrote again. Preconceived limitations, Sally writes. Solution syndrome, that's a good one.
I like it.
Being impatient. They don't think it's a problem. They're happy with the current state. People are scared to commit to something that seems challenging, right? So yeah, if we ask the question, we have to answer it, and that might be hard. Forcing myself not to jump to problem solving rather than better understanding the problem is what Jared writes.
Yeah.
Or management isn't going to support it. The use of junk words, very subjective, not quantified. Like, this is bad. Define bad. Yeah, I like that too. Gosh, a lot of comments on here. So really good. Too many moving targets, managing power structures, having to guide them back to immediate root cause, lack of going to see the issue in Gemba, technology. Boy, we got lots of challenges with this.
Yeah, we're like, I don't know, this is a tough question. I don't know if we're going to get any feedback on this. And this is like, better save this chat. This is like incredibly useful, really helpful. I wanted to come back to, I've forgotten who said it now, but the focus on the we can't. And that's a great one if you hear to flip. So, well, we can't get buy-in for that. And to flip those and say, how can we get buy-in? Make that the question, so that you switch it from that can't focus to, well, how could we? How would that happen? Those are great. I think Mike had that as well in some of his notes. So thank you. Those are great.
Thank you.
Yeah. So next step is to share the challenge, share the how can we question with the team, and share with the people familiar with the process, the insiders. Share it with people who aren't familiar with the process. Share it with outsiders. It helps to have new eyes look at the problem. There's a lot of research out there. There's actually a whole site called Innocentive that just puts problems out there. There's usually a monetary reward that for big issues like, COVID issues or science problems, industry problems. I saw one, they were trying to figure out how to have less packaging on the little butter pats they put on planes. And it's often outsiders who solve the problems, from completely other industries, which is fascinating to me. So it really take that to heart someone just put the Innocentive link up there. Thank you, Gemma. Yeah, because it's fascinating. I get challenges from them all the time. I have not solved anything, but you might invite subject matter experts to share the problem. You might even include a customer. When I was in Alberta Health Services, we often invited customer advocates to come help look at our map, identify their own pain points. And they were just a huge window on another way of looking at our process. We talk about, through the eyes of the customer, but sometimes it's helped to really include one right in the process. And get a view to problems you don't even know exist or a different way of looking at them. So thinking about who you're sharing it with, because it's asynchronous now, right? So you can give it to a broader group, a bigger group than would fit in a conference room or even on a Zoom call. Another thing you could do at the stage of this cycle is use creativity techniques. A lot of us are familiar with those. But you could use them live, but you could also use them at the point of sharing the how can we question. You can add to it. So, one of the techniques I used a long time ago was personas, which I'm starting to reincorporate, like, what would John Wayne do with this challenge? Give it to someone else. What would Obama do? Like, how would someone else solve this problem that's not looking through your lens? And it reminds me of, I had a tennis coach when I was younger, and I was struggling with a top spin. I was struggling with actually getting to the net fast. And she's like, okay, for a little while now, just play like Martina Navratilova, which I thought was hilarious. But it actually made me play better. And I thought, isn't that interesting? Just thinking I was going to play like Martina, and then I was getting to the net faster. So, keep that in mind. Another one is you can do, this one came from Mike Osterling, come up with 7 ways to address this challenge. So really upping the challenge and saying, okay, not just one idea, but, you're going to have to go out on 3 hikes with a dog and take a shower. And, like you got 7 of these to come up with. So sometimes the early ones are not as elegant. And as you sort of let them stew and percolate and have more autopilot opportunities, you come up with more. Another one also from Mike was short-term, long-term. How would you solve this short-term? How would you solve it long-term? I like that. Short-term, long-term countermeasures. And then this was a fun one. What if you were king? It's another persona, right? But if you were king, what would you do? How would you make this happen? And I like that a lot. So you can bring some of those techniques into the sharing part of the cycle. And then it brings us into time to think. So letting people spend time in that theta zone, and tell them to take the problem with them when they're on a walk, on a shower, or a drive. Take advantage of when their brains are doing their best work. And there's different ways you could do this. Sally Toyster says, my coach used to tell me to play like Gabriella Sabatini. Did it work, Sally? No. Oh, sorry. My colleague, Gemma Jones on this call, she has a technique where she likes to split brainstorming across 2 days. So she's got her first session in the afternoon, and the next day in the morning, she starts another session. So they've got to sleep in between. Another colleague, I believe it was Bella Engelbach, she says she sends group out for a walk in between sessions. So she'll have a break. When COVID's over, maybe you could have dinner with people, enjoy some wine. But there's a danger in asking people to go for a walk in between the sessions, especially this remote life. Be mindful, some people are unable to build in theta time on cue. Some people might, again, have to go look at email. They might have other obligations. So we have less control there. It's not always possible, to give a break and let people think. So there are other techniques where you can encourage theta thinking. So this was like, ooh, animation. So you have to plan for this in advance. But the idea is that you could give people gadgets to play with, something to occupy their hands. It's a way to get into autopilot mode. It doesn't have to be a fidget spinner. There's lots of other trainer toys. If anybody wants links to the ones that I like, I've got a lovely box for on-site training. Remember that? It's been a while since I was on site. In case you need to ship, in case you want to do this, you need to ship toys in advance, give people stuff to use in advance, and remind them to, grab gizmos while you're doing some, the how can we question and doing the brainstorming, so you can get some autopilot thinking. So that's a great sort of technique, or something you can fill in there. Another thing is you can do what I did with you. You can ask that question at just like I did at the start of the call. Where are you? What are you doing when you get your best ideas? And then, once they establish what works best for them, sometimes we're not always aware of it until we think about it, like, oh, well, that's actually true. I do tend to be a lot more prolific when I'm just in the shower. So you give people the chance. What?
Go ahead. I was just going to let you know, they had some really good ideas. Manuel said they have a walking meeting called 4 kilometers for ideas.
That's actually really smart.
Yep.
Aristotle had the walking school. They didn't have a building. They walked. while they discussed their theories with each other. So the term is peripatetic, but that's great. I love that, a walking meeting. And now we can do that.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's really cool. Or I've noticed that like my aunt, when she's knitting, it doesn't detract at all from our conversation, right? She's actually fully engaged, and I know it, even though she's, busting out some gorgeous little knitting action there. Manuel says, we walk around the factory outside and it's like a sport full of O2 brainstorm. O2 brainstorm. Anyway, that's cool. I like it. Thank you for that. But find out, what is oxygen, right? Sorry, I should have known that. O2. Yeah, so how they can be more intentional. Let's see. And in like, if you were going to the gym, if you can go to the gym, you could put the how can we question, on the little slot in front of the bike or whatever the machine is. So there's just ways people can be a little more intentional once they think about, what is their autopilot.
I think what's interesting really quickly is I did some work for a skateboard company, and they had a skateboard ramp outside, and at lunchtime it would just be a bunch of employees doing the skateboard ramp. Now that would not be theta thinking for me, because that is not autopilot. I would be scared to death that I would fall. And so I'm not sure that, it's interesting how, is it autopilot for some and maybe not others, but they loved it. And they always would invite me. I'd be like, I'm just going to watch.
Yeah, there's a couple more in here. Steve says he just grabbed something while he's in conversation to play with in his hand. So that's another kind of, we automatically do it. Jacqueline uses headphones listening to binaural beats in the theta frequency. Whoa, Jacqueline, you're blowing my mind. I got to come back and find out what that actually is, that there's beats in the theta frequency. And Gemma wants to see you skateboard, Tracy. Activate brain. Jacqueline, let's discuss. This is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So capturing brainwaves. So another thing you can do to help folks is the capture. I think Gemma keeps Post-it notes and a pencil by her bedside. Obviously, that was where she got her best ideas. Another one uses Google Keep. I can't remember who offered that up. That was one of the women in Lean. This is an app. I had to look it up. It's kind of cool. You can sync it across platforms, capture notes, photographs, all kinds of stuff in there. So that's good. I text myself messages. Tracy emails herself messages when she gets ideas. You can also use kind of old technique brainwriting. And now we've got these great digital boards. So put a link out there for people to have a place to put their ideas whenever they want to. Again, this is asynchronous. So 3 a.m, you got an idea, you can go put it up on the board if everyone has a link to that. So just getting people set up to be able to capture what they get, and then assemble, right? So get together, assume right now you're on Zoom, Google Hangouts, some other video app. We'll have more options post-pandemic, but right now you probably need some kind of a virtual whiteboard. All right, what's going on, Tracy? I'd be okay roller skating, not skateboard. Neither on a skateboard ramp. Tracy, we have to keep you, I need to keep you whole.
Exactly.
No skateboarding for you. So lots of virtual whiteboards now. So they're getting really sophisticated. A lot of them are looking for feedback from users. I think they've tapped Gemma already, like give us feedback, what you want. Tracy, I think another one is Miro, and then Lucid Spark. They want people, they're actively looking for, what do you need? What should be in here? So there's a lot of innovation going on in these platforms. So they're changing rapidly. Gemma did a webinar and an interactive session, but we've got a link to her November webinar on how to use Mural. So really great Mural techniques, facilitation techniques. That is just chock-a-block with great tips. Miro, actually, Mike Osterling did a great webinar on using Miro to help run interactive sessions. So either rapid planning events or rapid improvement events. And that one's great. And then Lucid Spark, Tracy and I are just starting to play with that because UC San Diego is using it. So those are great. I'm interested actually in hearing what the group on this call is using, if anything. So let me come over and light up another poll for you. And let's see. And
yeah, we got some people typing in the chat window already. They're using Mural at the Port of Seattle. People are loving it, Larry says. Lucid, MS Teams has a whiteboard. Haven't used it though. All right, so use the poll. Let's see what we're using, what people are using. On this poll, can they vote for more than one, or is it just one?
I think I limited them.
Okay.
Like you could do it Chicago style. As many things as you're using right now, go for it. No limit to your votes.
Yeah. Someone wrote Jamboard is available.
Jamboard.
Google Jamboard. It's new, apparently. They're doing an interactive planning session with customers. Group Mind, Amy mentions. So these are good. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff coming out, which is good.
Yeah. These are great. Thank you for adding. Let's see.
I've used Mural for a rapid improvement event. That was great. It was pretty good. Lucid Spark, they seem to have some of them. And I've seen, obviously working with Mike and Miro, I've seen what they can do. Microsoft Teams, I'm more limited to. Haven't seen that work as well yet. Okay. And surprisingly, Microsoft Teams has the highest people, 33% or 8 people have said that. Some 29 have said no. 29 have used Mural, probably because they're everybody's following Gemma. And she says Mural can now integrate with Teams, which is even better. I love that. And we have Miro 17% and other 21%. So I think some of the others are the Jamboards, Group Mind, something that's not on the list. Really interesting to see what's out there.
Yeah, no, it's a time of incredible growth in this whole. And what was that? Someone said, yeah, Lucid Spark is related to Lucid Chart, which is kind of an alternative to Visio process mapping. It's multi-platform. Visio is just PC and Lucid Chart's any platform. And I think there's lots of free versions I know with Lucid Chart, there's free versions. I think Lucid Spark also has a free version, but yeah. And Jacqueline, and Jen is happy with it. Okay, so I should stop looking at you guys talking. Okay, so now that you've got a virtual whiteboard, there are a few ways to use it. As mentioned, you can hand out the link to the board during the share step. A lot of times people are handing out these links ahead of time. People can add it at their leisure, populate the board during the session. If you attended Jeba's webinar on Mural or Mike Osterling's webinar on Miro, Tracy and I also used Mural in our Lean Six Sigma Leader course at UC San Diego. So as a facilitator, you might need to expand the Post-its. That's something I've seen happen where people put they're listing things in very small, it's too small, people can't see them. So you might get in there and sort of stretch them open such that people can read. It'll make the text bigger. If you are affinitizing, those of you who are familiar with that, where you're sort of grouping the Post-its into like categories, you might want to help name the categories. I was involved in one of that recently, I think it was with Gemma, where there was like dueling titles for the categories, which is okay, because even when we were live doing Post-it notes on a board, I often saw people were pulling Post-its from one area off into the other area. So that's also happens on the digital whiteboards. Let's see, you may, let's see.
I'll say that Gemma also says if you select all the stickies in Mural, you can resize them all to the biggest size in one click. Very nice.
Again with the tips. And that one's free from Gemma. Thank you very much. So Mike Osterling says he often breaks people into pairs. So they may have you've come in with all these great ideas. So pair up with your great ideas, flesh them out some more, and then come present what you want to the group, which I like. Another one is just multi-voting. If you've got to narrow them down, great technique. Again, you can do those on the boards. Or a challenge was, if we did all these ideas, how would you do it? Which is a great how can we question. Like, if we're going to do all the ideas up here, how would you make it work? How would you get buy-in? How would you enhance the options? So once you do this, now you've actually narrowed things down. You might have landed on a few things. You want to figure out how to make those happen. So now you have a new how can we question, which means now you start the cycle all over again. So now you got to rethink, well, who should we share this with, right? So we came up with these cool ideas, and who else should be involved in it now? This took the countermeasure in a different direction. So where would we go with this? Allow theta time again, assemble again. So it's much more repeatable in this current remote environment. This is asynchronous brainstorming. And, you figure out when you're going to bring people together, and you can just keep running it. So that's the Swan cycle. So your call to action. So for your next problem solving session, establish a how can we question. And now I think with the help of the group, you've got an idea or maybe a new habit of really poking at that how can we, really pushing to make sure that it's going to get you the best answers. Share it with others. And that means you can use personas. You can add a limit. I want you to come up with 7 ways to solve this, or short-term, long-term solutions. So add a little creativity in with the share. Then give them autopilot thinking time, whatever that is. You separate your sessions, end of the day, beginning of the day, or it could be give them a break in between, let them take a walk, or get some fidget spinners. But give them time, give them the opportunity, and get better ideas. So we'll give you, if you guys have questions, start posting them in the chat. If you have other questions you guys want answered. And then Tracy's going to describe what's coming up next month.
Yes. So we did, I participated in a conference. Many of you were there. It was the Women in Lean Interchange, the number 3. It was super fun. And I actually did a piece on lean transformation and developing a roadmap to have for cultural transformation. And so there was some interest in that. And I thought, you know what, why don't I do a webinar on it? So next month, we are going to be talking about how to create a roadmap for lean cultural transformation. And this is the challenge we see sometimes is, again, people tend to focus on tools and techniques, if you will, but not necessarily on culture. They focus on tools and training. And really, there can be a lot of talk about changing culture at work, but no real action. And leaders need to be committed and united on how to change the culture. So guess what? This webinar will give you some ideas on how you can drive commitment, unity, and action with organizational leadership teams so that they can embody a high-performing culture of problem solvers. Culture is not cookie cutter, and what works for some or one may not work as well in another. And so some of it is experimenting, but how are we doing those experiments as leadership, as a leadership team? And so I'm really excited about it. I've actually done this roadmap for clients in the past, and it has worked out really well. And so I'm happy to share how to do that in a virtual environment too. So looking forward to that. Hope you can join next month.
Thanks, Tracy. That is an awesome topic. So we're going to keep you guys up to date on what is going to happen at the cafe. We've got more webinars, as Tracy talked about, the collaboration, the collab. We've got some more things coming your way. So you're in our sites now. You're in our email list, so we'll keep you posted. But thanks for being so generous with your ideas here. This chat has been a blast to watch, very distracting and also really entertaining.
Yes. And, I'll just share that, one of the things we're really excited about next year is maybe experimenting with this idea of a collab where it's people coming together to practice and try new things in a safe environment. Gemma's webinar, we did this last one with the interactive part and everybody able to talk, and it's not, muted, and can only do chat, and then, trying something new. So we're exploring some ideas around that, and we're excited about it, and we hope you will be too.
And Gemma just posted the link to the binaural beats.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. Okay, any last questions or points, you guys? You got people excited for next month, Tracy.
Woohoo!
And thank you, Sally. And thank you, Amy.
And Chandra, we'll see you next month.